Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Holtzmichel channel and another episode in the woodworking series. Today we're going to be making, or starting to make, better say, a set of picnic table and a bench. We're going to saw it out of this log here. Of course, as you can see, the work's already been done, but today we're going to just kind of take a brief overview on how to actually run or operate one of these Alaska type sawmills. This is one I made myself a few years back. Hasn't seen a whole lot of use. Today was the first time it's actually done any cutting. But anyway, the secret to really using these things is all in the prep work. It's like with any other kind of machining operation. The better the better your setup is, the easier it's going to go and the more accurate. So the first step, of course, is going to be getting ready. We're going to make a cradle to set the log on here, right here. Next step is making the guide rail that goes on top of the log right here. Now, as you can see, the guide rail, there's a spreader in the front and a spreader in the back, and one pivots and the other one can actually fluctuate in width, and that's to compensate for the taper of the log. All logs are essentially cones, so they do all have a slight amount of taper, and so the longer your log is, or the longer your cut's going to be, the more that taper is going to really affect how that guide is going to lay on the log, and so you want to be able to compensate for that. I made these guides myself, so just a little, if you're looking to copy it, by all means go ahead. There's no patent on it. Then the next step, of course, is peeling the log right here, and Now I'm using a draw knife with a slight bow to it, and the reason being for that is the log is, you know, about 16 inches in diameter on the small end, and so a straight draw knife is going to be hard to work with, and so you want to be able to get your hands away from it. Most ideal probably tool would be a spoke shave, but unfortunately I don't have one that big, so I just opted for the draw knife with the curved blade and peel the log that way. So as you can see, there's it's quite laborious. It took me a little over an hour and a half to peel the thing, mainly because the bark was tight. And so here's some of the little critters that like to hide out. As you can see, there was a bark beetle in there, and another kind of woodworm that goes into the dry wood. Now, bark beetles are kind of interesting because in the galleys that you see, like right here, there's mold in there, and this may not be the mold that the guy drug in there with him, but they drag in a mold and feed the larva that way. The mold feeds off the sugar in the sap, and so that's what girdles the tree and kills it. It's not so much the bark beetle itself. A healthy tree can either pitch the beetle out by drowning it, or just flooding it out. Whereas a stressed tree, where it's been stressed by drought or whatnot, will have a little bit harder time. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent there. Anyway, so then the next step is to put the guide on top of the log, like right here. And then we get the Alaska mill set up. I wanted to make about a 5-inch thick tabletop, and then so I kind of just divvied up the log into 3 parts, and the top and the bottom slab are going to be the seat and the back for the bench later on, and then of course the piece I'm sitting on right here with my dirty butt is of course the table. So anyway, let's rip into it. Now, the one thing that a lot of guys on this subject do not mention is the fact that your chain has a tendency to drift. Now, you need to have accurately ground rakers so that the chain, because each tooth is slightly different than the next, and so the only real good raker filing guide that is on the market that accurately sets the raker to the tooth is from Carlton. It's the Carlton filo plate. I've done a video on that, and so on raker maintenance, so if you go back and look at that, you need to take a look at that. And then the other thing is the rails have a tendency to wear off onto one side, especially, you know, if you grind your chain, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a differential in pitch or angle on the tooth, and so it'll pull to one side or the other, and then it'll bind up in the cut. And so you'll have to make sure that your rails are ground nice and square to the chain, and keep them ground that way, you know, because again, the chain will deflect and start wandering off, and of course it starts compounding with time, and then sooner or later you just won't be able to get a cut through. Now, the other optional piece of equipment that I do recommend that everybody have with one of these is the auxiliary oiler. These kind of cuts sop up a lot of oil, and no matter how much you turn the oiler up on your saw, you're going to have an oil deficit, a lubrication deficit on your chain. You won't see that readily, but you will hear it. I don't know if the camera picked it up, but here's, you know, the tip. And if you listen carefully, you can hear that zinging sound of the chain on the gear, on the sprocket, and that's from just the chain hitting the teeth, kind of not dry, but dry enough to where it makes you know, a lot of noise, and then it also creates a lot of heat and friction, and so then you get, you know, blue spots on your bar. Now, I've got the oiler turned up completely on here, and then what you can do to counter that is, you know, put a little dab of oil on the tip and allow it to pull it into the cut or into the bar, and that kind of helps. It's not the optimal solution, but it's better than nothing. So that's one thing to keep in mind when running one of these. Now, as you noticed over here on the power head side, where the chain comes out of the cut, if your chain is starting to get dull, you'll see little curls forming. And that's because the chain is no longer separating the fiber at the end of the cut, and so it just kind of tends to peel off a small curl, and the duller the chain gets, the more pronounced that curl will be. So when you got a nice fresh sharp chain, you probably won't see that curl development. So, and as you know, cut, you'll start seeing it, and then you'll know, okay, now I need to either on the next cut sharpen my chain, or, you know, whatever. I don't recommend trying to using it with a dull chain, because it's straining the power head a little bit too much. Now, if the camera picked it up, I'm not sure. The smoke coming up out of the saw here is quite normal. What that is sawdust and oil and other grime that builds up on the muffler. It's unavoidable. As you're doing any kind of cut, the chain will sling oil and all kinds of stuff around, and it'll build up in behind the muffler. And when you're doing these kind of a stationary cut where the heat of the engine is pretty high, at the end of the cut you'll see that that smoke coming up out of the saw. That's quite normal. It's nothing to be worried about. Now, you don't want to have flame coming out, but anyway, a little bit of smoke is quite within the boundaries of normality on operations with one of these. So the next step is to kind of throw some kind of spacers in between the chunks here and get them to drying. This has to get dried down, down to about at least air dry, so around 15-16%, in order for the legs to when I drill in with a Forstner bit and put the legs in, that they don't flop around and fall out. Granted, they'll be getting wedges and all kinds of stuff, but in order for the thing not to be wibbly wobbly, you need to allow it to dry, so that when you insert the leg into the hole, it stays there and doesn't wiggle around, because as the wood dries it shrinks, and then of course your hole gets bigger. And same thing on the legs, the holes on, or the pegs on the legs will shrink as well, and then you'll see that additional soot compounds, and so you don't want to use green wood right out the get-go. So anyway, that's kind of a wrap for this little episode. Stay tuned for the next one in a few weeks when this thing's dry enough to be processed further. So with that, if you have any thoughts, comments, critiques, suggestions, or questions, by all means, put them in the comment section below. Every little bit of dialogue is helpful towards growth of the channel. And for those of you who have noticed, I have also started a presence on BitChute and Rumble. Who knows what the language Nazis over at YouTube might find offensive, and so I figured, well, it probably might be prudent to have some backup channels on other platforms just to be on the safe side. So with that, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by, and we hope to all see you all again soon in the next video.